It is 9:34 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It is the 16th day of December 2025, and this is episode 1231 of Bitcoin. And Trump is considering a pardon for Samouria Bitcoin wallet co-founder. Why not the other one? Well, we'll read the story as we always do here on the Bitcoin and podcast, and we'll find out if there is a consideration for the other guy, because both of them need a pardon. Not one of them. Both of them need to be pardoned. We need to send a very clear message to the judicial system that this shit is unacceptable. And if Trump does pardon even one of these guys, but both of them need it, but even if he were to pardon one of them, that sends a pretty clear message to the citizenry of the United States that the judicial system is an embarrassing pile of crap. I mean, it literally sends the message of embarrassment to the DOJ. So let's keep our fingers crossed, and we'll find out more about it. We're going to stay with Trump for a little bit because American Bitcoin, his Trump-related company, is making the news this morning. And then the labor market numbers came out, and well, we'll get to that before we actually run all the numbers. Then in the second part of the show, we're going to talk about this Fed chair switch up and the possibility that an AI bubble is what may have caused a little bit of a letdown in the price in Bitcoin yesterday and this morning, although we are recovering a little bit, but who knows how long that lasts. And then UK Supreme Court is weighing in on a Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision case. I kind of really thought that we had enough of our friend Craig Wright, but I guess not, unless Craig Wright isn't actually physically involved in Bitcoin SV as far as this case is concerned. We'll find out. And then for the first time ever on the Bitcoin and podcast, I got to talk about Metamask as a full story instead of me just making fun of Metamask, the wallet, because it was one of the earlier web-based Ethereum wallets. I'm going to have to cover this one because it directly involves Bitcoin. So that's pretty much the lay of the land this morning. So let's talk about this pardon. Trump says, he actually said it, that he will consider a pardon for Samouria Bitcoin wallet co-founder Micah Zimmerman from Bitcoin Magazine. President Donald Trump said that he will review the case of Keon Rodriguez, co-founder of Samouria Wallet, as questions mount over the federal conviction of the Bitcoin privacy software developer. When asked about Rodriguez's upcoming prison sentence, Trump said, quote, "I've heard about it. I'll look at it. I don't know anything about it, but we'll take a look." Okay, man. So I've heard about it. I'll look at it. I don't know anything about it, but we'll look at it. Okay, great, Trump. That's an awesome message right there, pal. Rodriguez publicly acknowledged Trump's sentiment, tweeting, quote, "Your continued noise is working. Thank you to everyone pushing real Donald Trump to pardon Bill and me. Let's get this over the line. Hashtag pardon Samouria." Rodriguez, along with co-founder William Hill, was convicted of conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitting business, a charge stemming from Samouria Wallet, a Bitcoin privacy tool that allows users to mix coins and maintain financial anonymity without giving up custody of their funds. I got to pause here because these stories that keep coming out about Keon and William keep referring to Samouria and the mixing part of Samouria as something that doesn't exist anymore. That is not true. That mixer is still up and running, which is so, as far as I know, unless somebody out there knows different, as far as I know, that hasn't shut down. They've been convicted for, operating it or whatever, but it doesn't seem to have actually stopped running. Again, if somebody out there knows better, please correct me. I don't mind being corrected. I do mind being flat ass wrong and nobody actually, saying, hey, you're flat ass wrong. Continuing the case, which began under the Biden administration and continued through the Trump Justice Department. It all culminated in Rodriguez receiving a 5-year sentence and Hill getting 4 years, though Hill's age and recent autism diagnosis led to a slightly reduced sentence. Critics of the prosecution argue the case represents a very dangerous precedent for the cryptocurrency industry. The U.S. Department of Justice claimed that Samouria Wallet facilitated over $2 billion in unlawful transactions and laundered more than $100 million from criminal sources. However, only the unlicensed money transmission charge survived a high-profile trial, raising questions about the strength of the case overall. Samouria Wallet mixing services, Whirlpool and Ricochet, were designed to obscure the origin of criminal proceeds. No, it wasn't designed to obscure the origin of criminal proceeds. It was designed to obscure the money. Whether it was criminal or not, you can't just say, okay, well, this was specifically designed to launder and obfuscate criminal proceeds. That is an incorrect statement. That is completely incorrect. It is completely untrue. Do better. Do better. God, okay, well, whatever. Whirlpool and Ricochet were designed to obscure the origin of money from activities including drug trafficking, darknet marketplaces, fraud, cybercrime, and murder for hire operations. Again, you're making assumptions that all the money that went through Whirlpool and Ricochet were expressly criminal from drug trafficking, darknet marketplaces, fraud, cybercrime, and murder for hire operations. Did some of that money possibly go through Whirlpool? Yes, of course it probably went through Whirlpool. But you're assigning the developers with this language. You're assigning the developers an intent, a basic intent to develop something expressly for the commission of covering up funds through criminal activity. And that is not why they designed Whirlpool. They were not sitting around a kitchen table going, how can we help the criminals today? That's not what they were doing. What they were doing was trying to say, how can we make sure that people feel safe in their personal monetary transactions? And Whirlpool and Ricochet were born. But it wasn't born out of intent to, how can we help the criminals today? Again, dude, do better, okay? Do a lot. You're going to have to do a lot better than this shit. This is ridiculous writing at this point, and it's kind of pissing me off, but I'll hold my breath. Court documents revealed the developers actively encouraged criminal use, describing the service as money laundering for Bitcoin, and promoted its tools on darknet forums. Yeah, they did do that, but when you come right off of language that says that they intended to design software expressly to help criminals, and then you say that the developers actively encourage criminal use, you're casting a personality on these people that makes me think that the author, let me go make sure who this is, because I know I said it, but I've got 2 brain cells. So Micah Zimmerman, you've got to do a lot better than this. You're casting aspersions that you know nothing about. You can't possibly, unless you sat down and had beer with these guys for years and years and years and know them as friends, then you have no fucking idea what their goddamn intent was. And stop pretending that you do, Micah. Again, you're going to need to do a lot better than this. I don't know who pissed in your cornflakes this morning, but dude, everything about this is wrong. So stop it. The Department of Justice framed the case as part of a broader crackdown on crypto mixing services. Rodriguez had requested a light sentence, but the court imposed the statutory 5-year max. Trump's comments come amid his campaign promises to defend the right of self-custody and financial privacy. During the 2024 Bitcoin conference in Nashville, he pledged to end what was described as the anti-crypto crusade of the prior administration. A pardon for Rodriguez and Hill would signal a clear commitment to those promises, protecting developers from legal exposure for building tools that enhance privacy and security for just everyday Americans. With Rodriguez set to report to prison on December the 18th and Hill already sentenced, The Trump administration faces a high-profile decision that could shape the future of financial privacy, software development, and cryptocurrency regulation in the United States. Now, that is a true statement. That is a true statement. What's not clear at all in this particular story is, aside from who pissed in Micah Zimmerman's Cheerios this morning, is it a consideration for just Keon Rodriguez, or is it also a consideration of William Hill? Because to pardon one and not pardon the other in this case makes no sense, considering that they were tried together, convicted. Well, I think the trials were actually separate, but essentially they were tried together, convicted together for the exact same charge. And if you pardon one but not the other, that doesn't send any message at all other than we're confused. And that's not a good message to send when you're going into primary election, or not primaries, midterm elections, especially if you're hoping for any support from your original quote unquote crypto crew that got you into office in 2024. You best do both of them or neither, right? Although if you don't do anything at all, it's definitely not going to help. So he really has to pardon both of them. If he wants that same crew to vote the same way, he has to make a stand against the Department of Justice and say, this is wrong, and I'm deciding as the chief executive of the United States of America to override all of you stupid little bitches, and we're going to let these guys walk. And they need to be able to walk. Staying with Trump, American Bitcoin enters top 20 public Bitcoin treasury companies, now holding 5,098 Bitcoin. Again, Micah Zimmerman, and I hope you do better, from Bitcoin Magazine, American Bitcoin Corp has entered the top 20 publicly traded Bitcoin treasury companies by holdings after growing its strategic reserve to approximately 5,098 Bitcoin as of December the 14th, according to company disclosures. The Miami-based firm said its Bitcoin was accumulated through a combination of in-house mining and strategic market purchases. The total includes Bitcoin held in custody as well as BTC pledged as collateral for miner purchases under a supply agreement with hardware manufacturer Bitmain, per the company release. Based on rankings from BitcoinTreasuries.net, the milestone places American Bitcoin among the largest public Bitcoin holders globally just over 3 months after its NASDAQ listing. And as part of its treasury reporting, the company also highlighted growth in its proprietary Satoshis per share metric, or the SPS metric, which measures the amount of Bitcoin attributable to each outstanding common share. As of December the 8th, the SPS stood at 507 Satoshis per share, representing a more than 17% increase in just over 1 month. American Bitcoin is also introducing a new disclosure metric, Bitcoin yield, oh joy, which tracks the percentage change in SPS over a defined period. The company said the combined metrics are intended to give investors clearer insight into both per-share Bitcoin exposure and how that exposure evolves over time. Quote, I am incredibly proud of our tremendous growth, said Eric Trump, co-founder and chief strategy officer of American Bitcoin. Quote, in just over 3 months since our NASDAQ listing, we have surged past dozens of companies, propelling us into the top 20 publicly traded Bitcoin treasury companies, end quote. Earlier this month, American Bitcoin reportedly added 416 Bitcoin in one single week, lifting holdings from approximately 4,783 Bitcoin as of December the 8th. And the company said its accumulation strategy prioritizes long-term Bitcoin exposure over short-term price movements, supported by an operating model designed to maximize BTC retention. Supported by an operating model designed to maximize retention. Well, if all your company does is hold Bitcoin because you're a Bitcoin treasury company, then I want to know more about the operating model that provides revenue. I'm just saying, I'm like a dog with a bone on that. No revenue, then, well, whatever. Anyway, in early December, the American Bitcoin stock plunged more than 50% shortly after markets opened, triggering multiple trading halts and erasing months of speculative gains. The stock fell to an intraday low of $1.75 before recovering slightly, though it remained down over 35% at the time of writing. The sell-off followed a broader downturn in crypto markets, with Bitcoin sliding into the mid-$85,000 range. Nearly $1 billion in leveraged crypto positions were liquidated the day before, worsening already fragile market conditions. Now, with Bitcoin trading slightly above 87,000, American Bitcoin shares are still down at $1.61 per share. So not getting the boost that Bitcoin itself was doing. But hey, it is what it is, and it makes me hungry for Sats for Snacks at sats4snacks.com. That's Sats, the number 4, snacks, all one word, .com. Satsforsnacks.com offers you bit chunks, freeze-dried pineapple. You can get them in a 5-pack for 44,000 sats. Why sats? Because this is the Circle P, buddy. It's where I bring plebs with goods and services just like you to plebs just like you who want to buy said goods and services, but you're going to be buying in Bitcoin, because if you're not selling it in Bitcoin, you ain't in the Circle P. But Sats for Snacks and my good friend Permanerd, who owns the company, is. He also will get you just peachy, a 5-pack of freeze-dried peaches. These are really good peaches too, by the way. I haven't tried the pineapple ones. The peaches and the strawberries, oh my God, and the mango, really, really, really freaking good. And he does have freeze-dried mangoes. He's also got proof of healing Comfrey Salve. Now, so it's not freeze-dried food. You don't eat it, right? It's a salve. You put it on your hands. Why Comfrey? Because it heals abrasions, cuts, sprains, rashes, bee stings, wasp stings. And when I mean cuts, I don't mean deep cuts. I mean like scratches, like cat scratches, slightly, slightly deeper cuts. But I mean, if you need stitches for something, dude, don't use this. Just go get the stitches. And then after it starts healing internally, use the Comfrey on top, because that will actually heal the whole thing over. That's the problem with using Comfrey, is that it heals so good that if you do it on a deeper wound, it could heal the outside over the inside and doesn't allow the wound to actually be able to flush. And that can cause some serious problems. That's how well Comfrey works. So go to sats4snacks.com. That's sats4snacks.com. And make sure you use code BitcoinAnd for a 2.1% off. That's right. You get 2.1% off with Bitcoin and over there at Permanerd's sats4snacks.com. And it also lets Permanerd that I made a sale for him here on the Circle P, where plebs just like you get to know plebs just like Permanerd. Okay, on to CoinDesk. United States added 64,000 jobs in November, with unemployment rate jumping to a 4-year high of 4.6%. So it's not exactly what the markets were looking for this morning, as the Dow and the rest of the legacy equity indices are showing us. The U.S. labor market appears to have continued to soften in recent months as the government has finally caught up to doing the reports that had been delayed due to the government shutdown. Non-farm payrolls rose by 64,000 in November, according to a Tuesday morning report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Economist estimates had been for jobs growth of 50,000, so at least they beat estimates. The November unemployment rate, however, rose to a 4-year high of 4.6% versus an expected 4.4%, and it was actually 4.4% unemployment in September. And for October, the economy saw jobs decline by 105,000 versus the 119,000 added in September. The negative October print, however, was surely influenced by the government shutdown. Taken together, the reports paint at least a modestly weaker picture of the employment situation than had been expected. The price of Bitcoin gave back some of its small overnight gains in the minutes following the report, dipping back to 87,000 flat, and U.S. stock index futures swung from small gains to small losses, and the 10-year Treasury yield remained steady at 4.17%. Ahead of the data, Markets were pricing in a 75% probability that the Federal Reserve would hold rates steady in its January meeting, and those odds remain the same shortly following the release. Okay, so we'll have to go back and look at stuff like Polymarket and Kalshi over the next few days to see if that number changes. I suspect it will. I suspect that there might be a better chance that we get some kind of cut in January. Doesn't mean we'll get one. It just means that I think that we'll see a higher number than 75%. But we've got more economic data coming in over the next couple of days, so that may change the landscape somewhat. I don't know. Let's run the numbers. CNBC futures and commodities breaking. Key ACA tax credits likely to expire after House Speaker blocks the vote. Just thought you might want to know that before we look at energy, which is getting hammered like dog shit. Brent North Sea down 2.5 points to $59 and a dime. That's a real low for oil right now. And West Texas Intermediate following with 2.43% to the downside, 55.44 a barrel. Natural gas getting clobbered, 2% to the downside. Back you go to under $4, $3.94 per 1,000 cubic feet. Gasoline down 2.75 to $1.68 a gallon. At least that part's good for me, considering I got a hell of a drive ahead of me. Murban crude is just hovering above $60 after a 2.5% decline. Why? Well, it looks like we might be looking at a surplus glut because OPEC Plus guys, they have just kept ramping up their production after years of keeping things cut. And then if it's possible that the futures guys are counting this Ukraine deal, if it goes through, they are assuming that if they accept the peace deal from Russia, that Russia's sanctions on their oil exports will automatically vanish. Now, there's no guarantee that that would actually happen, but there's also not a guarantee that it won't. So I think the future guys are just going, oh shit, here comes Russian oil. It could be on the market. But again, it all depends on what the hell happens, like if Zelensky accepts that deal or not. So we got to wait again. Metals are mixed. Palladium is doing well, 2.15% to the upside. Gold is flat, no change. 4,335 and 2 dimes. Platinum is up 3 1/3. Silver is down 1/4, and copper is down 1 full point. Ag is getting hammered as well. Lots of double-digit losses here. The biggest winner is chocolate, 2% to the upside. Got a lot of losers here. Let me see. Okay, looks like the biggest loser is rough rice, 2.72% to the downside. And meanwhile, live cattle is down 0.14%. Lean hogs, however, up a point, and feeder cattle are up 2/3 of a point. Legacy indexes not doing well. S&P down 0.6%, NASDAQ down 1/3. Dow is down 3/4 of a point, and the S&P mini is down almost a full point. And then there's Bitcoin, 87,150. That is a $1.74 trillion market cap, and we can get 20.2 ounces of our favorite shiny metal rock with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,962,751.16 of. Average fees per block remain low, 0.02 BTC taken in fees on a per block basis. Seem to be about 25 blocks carrying 47,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 2 sats per VByte. Low priorities get you in at 0.4. Now, mining. 1.05 zettahashes per second, so we are still in zettahash range. Although I am seeing a little bit of a dip from over the last couple of days. So maybe minor capitulation actually occurs this time. We'll have to wait and see. Now, on to Free Samurai, yesterday's episode of Bitcoin, and I got Jay with 2100 sat says, so true that everything we see is just side effects. What decisions went into what we see? and what was really intended is completely obscured. Yeah, no shit, brother. I hear that. All right. Used to read a lot with 500 sats says cheers with the only emoji that I can actually read seems to be the clinking beer glasses. User with a lot of numbers with 100 says go Archangels go. C4OZ with 2292 says great show. I appreciate that. Nick Dose with 122 says cheers. BTC Master with 121 says abcwebdesigns.com accepts sats. We build your website and you pay us with sats. Get started on your digital journey today. That's abcwebdesigns.com from BTC Master. Let's see, I think that's it. Nope, Pies with 121. Bunch of emojis I can't read, but that is the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. Bitcoin and altcoin sell off as Fed chair switch up, AI bubble fears spook the markets. Marcel Peckman from Cointelegraph. Maybe we'll get some insight as to what's going on here. The cryptocurrency market saw a correction on Monday, with Bitcoin retesting the $85,000 level and shitcoin number 1 dropping to a price that I don't care about. Traders became more risk-averse after a survey showed worsening economic conditions in the United States and changes in investor expectations regarding the proposed options for the next U.S. Federal Reserve chairman. The resilience of the 5-year Treasury after hitting a low of 98.64 on Wednesday points to a more defensive shift in positioning as liquidity conditions tightened across all global markets. That caution comes amid mounting fiscal pressures after a recent tax and spending package extended credits and raised the U.S. debt ceiling by $5 trillion. Holy shit. Also, the Federal Reserve said that it will begin purchasing about $40 billion per month in short-dated Treasury bills as part of a technical reserve management operation aimed at maintaining ample liquidity, a move policymakers have stressed is not a return to broad quantitative easing, nor is it a shift in the Fed's monetary policy stance. The consumer sector remains a concern as a CNBC survey revealed that 41% of Americans plan to spend less during the holidays this year, up from 35% in 2024, and additionally 61% of respondents cited affordability problems due to stagnant wages amid rising prices. U.S. October retail sales data will be released on Tuesday, along with November non-farm payroll figures, which we've already been through. Excessive leverage in the cryptocurrency market continues to be a major issue, with futures open interest standing at $135 billion. Over 527 million worth of bullish leverage positions have been liquidated in the past 24 hours, causing traders to worry about further downside. Weakness in the artificial intelligence sector has also driven traders to increase cash positions, exiting riskier asset classes like cryptocurrency, and hedge fund giant Bridgewater Associates reportedly said that tech firms' heavy reliance on debt markets to fund artificial intelligence investments has reached a dangerous phase, according to Reuters. Quote, going forward, there is a reasonable probability that we will soon find ourselves in a bubble, Bridgewater's co-chief investment officer Greg Jensen wrote in a note. Demand for leverage on short seller positions surged on Bybit, pushing the annualized funding rate below zero. This unusual situation where longs, or buyers, are paid to keep their leverage positions opened rarely lasts as arbitrage opportunities emerge. Still, since the October 10th crash, liquidity has become much tighter, with some market makers likely facing sizable losses. Part of Monday's decline in the U.S. stock market can be attributed to a decrease in Kevin Hassett's odds of replacing Jerome Powell as the next Fed chair. CNBC reported that President Trump's inner circle pushed for someone perceived as more independent. Trump said on Friday that Kevin Warsh would also be a great fit, which then eased concerns about the fragility of the U.S. dollar. The dollar index found support at the 98 level after 4 consecutive weeks of decline. This stability suggests higher confidence in the U.S. government's ability to avoid a recession. Jesus, freaking people. Which is somewhat supportive for the stock market, but less so for cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin and shitcoin number one are generally seen as part of the independent financial system, so the relative strength of the U.S. dollar reduces the demand for alternative hedges. The excessive leverage in the cryptocurrency market, combined with broader macroeconomic uncertainty, is likely to continue weighing on prices. So the AI bubble has been around for a while, as far as, people talking about it and fretting about it and clutching their pearls about it and wetting their britches about it. But we don't know if there's actually a bubble in AI. I kind of think that there is, but how bad? It's like nobody, I haven't really seen any good credible numbers yet as to, okay, here's the revenue of these companies. Let's compare it to how much they actually are in debt, or rather how much they're leveraged, or any other of the terms that you want to use as to how they raise their money and who they owe. And when do they owe it, right? All that is a factor as to whether or not, not only are we in a bubble, but how big is that bubble? I have yet to see credible numbers. However, I don't have a Bloomberg terminal, so, take it with a grain of salt. But moving on to UK Supreme Court shuts down $13 billion Bitcoin SV case appeal. Logan Hitchcock, please don't say Craig Wright's name, from decrypt.co is writing this one. An appeal from Bitcoin Satoshi Vision investors in a case seeking more than $13 billion in damages from prominent crypto exchanges was rejected by the UK Supreme Court last week. The appeal stems from losses that mounted in the BSV token following its delisting by major crypto exchanges like Binance and Kraken back in 2019. So this is like 6 years ago. The latest proceedings and permission to appeal fell to 3 court justices who ultimately refused it. Quote, the application does not raise an arguable point of law or a point of law of general public importance, Justices Lord Hodge, Lord Sales, and Lady Rose concluded. The appellants, BSV Claims Limited, alleged that token holders suffered from immediate and persistent effect and the foregone growth effect, which pertains to the coin's immediate fall in value following the delisting and the stunted potential growth as a result of that delisting. BSV was launched in 2018 in an attempt to, quote, restore the original vision of pseudonymous Bitcoin creator Satoshi Nakamoto. It was created as a hard fork of Bitcoin Cash, itself a complete worthless shitcoin, which is also a fork of Bitcoin. There you go, real, actual Bitcoin. Neither coin is worth anywhere near as much as actual, real Bitcoin. In July of 2024, the UK's Competition Appeal Tribunal struck out the appellant's claim on the foregone growth effect, dismissing an assumption that BSV would have ultimately grown to match the same value as Bitcoin itself. Talk about reaching for it. In May, the appellants attempted to revive the claim, but it was dismissed once more, affirming the 2024 ruling under the market mitigation rule, which requires claimants to take reasonable steps to reduce their losses when functioning markets are available. In other words, BSV investors should have attempted to mitigate their losses when it became apparent the token was going to be delisted by exchanges. They held on to it. We told them not to, but yeah, they did, dude. They did. BSV has plummeted more than 96% from its 2021 all-time high of $489.75, recently changing hands at $18. Last year, it fell sharply amid news that a UK court ruled that Craig Wright, the creator of BSV, was not, in fact, the pseudonymous Bitcoin creator Satoshi Nakamoto, as he had claimed. Coinbase fully disabled support for BSV in 2021 after the network suffered a 51% attack and then became unstable. While BSV has seen a downward price trajectory over the last few years, Bitcoin has continued to rise and set new peak prices in that time since, most recently setting a new high above 126,000 in October. And recently we were trading down at 85,873, which is 32% down from that peak. So the BSV guys, they didn't sell their coin after all these people, Binance and Kraken, they told everybody, we are going to delist the coin. It's not like these idiots woke up one morning and all of a sudden that their whatever reason they think it's their favorite token was delisted. They knew it was coming, and the judges are saying, look, you knew this shit was going to happen, and you held on to this worthless piece of crap anyway. Go to hell. That's what has been said here. So just be aware. Hold on for a second. Okay. Just looking at a message on my phone from my daughter. All right. So last one up for the day. Last one up for the day is Metamask. I promise everybody on this show that I don't talk about shitcoins in any kind of good light, right? And I also don't talk about any of their crappy technology that supports said shitcoins. However, because Bitcoin is involved in this particular story, this is why we're going to be talking about Metamask for the next couple of minutes. So from atlas21.com, Metamask integrates Bitcoin. Multi-chain expansion continues. It took them this long to figure it out. Oh my God, what a bunch of dorks. So Metamask has officially integrated Bitcoin support, hinting that additional blockchains will be added throughout 2026. The announcement came December 15th via the company's social media channels, 10 months after the first preview back in February. The team clarified that Bitcoin transactions will appear in the asset list once confirmed. With this new implementation, wallet users can now purchase Bitcoin directly, perform swaps into Bitcoin, and send and receive the asset. The wallet will initially support native SegWit addresses, with plans to add Taproot addresses soon, and that's in quotes, according to the announcement. The integration was made possible thanks to the Bitcoin Development Kit library and support from the BDK Foundation. To encourage adoption, MetaMask has introduced a rewards system. Every conversion into Bitcoin allows users to accumulate reward points within the platform. Before this update, MetaMask users could access Bitcoin only through wrapped versions of the asset. Originally built to support the Ethereum ecosystem and EVM-compatible networks, MetaMask began its multi-chain expansion in 2025. The journey started in May with Solana integration, continued in August with Sei, and in November with Monad. The addition of Bitcoin represents the latest chapter in this diversification strategy. Well, the company has maintained a cautious approach regarding the future developments, confirming only that more networks will be integrated in 2026 without revealing which blockchains will join the ecosystem. So not only did they add Bitcoin, they actually are giving you a reward to swap into Bitcoin, which I kind of find that a little intriguing there. It almost feels like backpedaling by these guys from MetaMask, but whatever, it's okay. I mean, it's like, it's Bitcoin is for enemies, and that's okay that it's for enemies. It's not negative. It's just a statement of fact. Just because you don't like somebody and they have the ability to use something that you do like and you can't stop them, that is actually a good thing. That is a feature, not a bug. So, more power to the guys over at MetaMask. At least they finally came to their senses, even though it took them a little too long to do so. All right. That is the end of the show for today. So a couple of things that I want to make sure that I get clear here. I will not be on the air tomorrow, and I will not be on the air the day after that. I may not be on the air on Friday. And that's because for 2 days, I'm going to be driving a car. Then I like driving, but I can't do anything else, especially when my family's involved. Although it would be interesting to have a mobile a truly mobile podcasting station, but I there's no way that I'd be able to run this show the way that I run it by reading you stories and not completely die, like horror on the highway. Okay, so there's that. Also, I do want to cut shows while I'm on Christmas vacation. However, they are not going to be long if I do. And I haven't really determined whether or not I will. But here's the issue. If I don't, my numbers on downloads for the podcast fall precipitously, and they always do. They do it 2 times a year, when I go to Colorado for Christmas break and when I go to Colorado for summer break. Both those times, I see a precipitous drop in downloads, and it takes me a long time to build that shit back up. If you want to help me have that not happen, then 5-star reviews on Apple, like anywhere really, but on Apple, because it has been a central, like almost a centerpiece, not only is it podcast index, right? That's where a lot of Apple, well, actually, that's where Apple basically first leveraged to be able to do podcasting the way Apple first did podcasting, is that they used Podcast Index, which is essentially the library of all the RSS feeds. And Apple leveraged that when they got into podcasting. So Podcast Index was around before Apple even got into podcasting. So that said, Apple's been at podcasting for so long that they have sort of kind of assumed the centerpiece of podcasting in general. And a lot of the podcast platforms look to Apple Podcast and what the ratings of shows are to be able to, hey, do we want this show discoverable? Do we want people to see this show when they open up our app, even though we're not Apple Podcasts? That's why the Apple Podcast 5-star reviews are important. It's not just for people that are using Apple Podcasts. It's people that are using all manner of other kinds of podcasting platforms and podcasting apps on their Android and or iOS phones. That's why it's important. And that's how you can help me out. Is if you don't have sats to shoot me, if for whatever reason you can't donate to the show, right? Then what you can do is go over to Apple Podcast, find the Bitcoin and podcast, and give me a 5-star review. And if I get a whole bunch more of them while I'm kind of in a hiatus situation, that completely pads my download numbers, which in the future, hopefully will enable me to actually monetize the show into something that, I don't know, buys actual food. I'm just kidding. I do get enough that I can get, a couple of dinners and stuff like that. But, having it be a full-time gig that provides an actual income is something that I really dream about. I really like the idea of just this is what I do. Instead of having to go and scratch around and beg and plead with, employers and whatnot like that, it would be nice to be able to have enough of the numbers, which I'm getting there, but I still want more, to be able to go to people that I think you would not enjoy. Nobody enjoys commercials. I understand that, but I would be able to be in a position to really look at the people that I would want advertising on this show and make a determination whether or not this is something that I would allow my listeners to hear about. And I know that sounds like censorship. It's not, but it's one of these things where if you're sitting around my kitchen table, right, I want to provide you with something you can actually use, not something somebody just paid me to shove in your face. I want it to actually be something that you guys care about. It's my kitchen table. It's my house. I get to take care of it the way that I want. And when people are in my house, I get to take care of them the way that I want. And that's the way that I view you guys that are listening to this show. You're at my kitchen table. We're all having coffee together. And I'm not going to serve you something that I don't think is healthy and something that you might enjoy. If I can get my numbers up and keep them up, especially during times when, I'm out, for Christmas and summer, then that helps. So a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, especially, but also 5-star reviews on any other platform is a big help. It does cost you time. And I'm not a person that believes that time is free. Just because it's not, linked directly to cash, you're not giving me cash, doesn't mean that when you spend your time giving me a 5-star review and writing some kind words, it doesn't at all look to me like, well, that's just a cheapskate that doesn't want to donate to the show. That is not true at all. When somebody gives me a 5-star review, that is gold. It is solid freaking gold, because not only does it represent my listeners' time that it took to do that for me, it has real world effects. So do be a favor and consider going over to Apple Podcasts and giving me a 5-star review. And hey, I won't be here for the next couple of days, but I will definitely see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.